Hello and welcome to the channel. In this mini-series, we will be building a Lego Venator Hangar so that we can display MOCs and work in progress builds on it. So far, as you can see, I've got these large gray base plates that have a bunch of bricks on them. This is so that I can make it into mills plates so that the MOC sits up about a brick and a plate higher than just being on the base plate. That makes it so that if I need to take this to conventions, it will fit seamlessly in with other people's stuff. The other thing I've already gone and done is I've built this section, which, as far as I can tell from a bunch of Google searching and looking at other people's MOCs, is generally where ships and or vehicles sit. Most of the MOCs I saw use Republic gunships, and so a gunship and or a ETA 2, like a Jedi Interceptor, would sit on this, and that way they're distinguished to where different vehicles are going to go. With this vehicle spot already templated out, I am hoping to be able to fit 3 or 4 of them, depending on how much space I have. I think I was measuring it out earlier, and I can squeeze 4 if, for one, I make the very left and the very right edges of this display 1 brick thick, and then have 4 bricks in the front, and then I can have 6 to 8 for the back for like the viewing area and the rest of the wall that goes up. That should hopefully allow me to have room for 4 of these, plus I also need to extend this because I should have, which is why this is here, I have room to extend the platform bit another 6 or 7 studs. That allows me to either make these smaller and make 2 areas, or I can make this 1 long rectangle. I am undecided as of right now, but I am leaning towards just making it 1 long rectangle. It helps with the construction underneath, because this is what it looks like underneath right now, as 1 giant 16 by 16, and then follow it up with these. But if I make it even longer, I can potentially just use 2 16 by 16s and then fill in the edges with like 2x and stuff. The reason I'm doing it this way as well is so in case I want to turn the Venator from being a Republic Venator to being an Imperial one, or a different type of capital ship, I can take out these different panels and replace them with the appropriate ones. The other reason I'm also doing a Venator in general is because, at least for the 4 main factions that I care about, the Republic, the CIS, the Empire, and Rebels, they all have the ability to have a Venator. Obviously, the clones have one. The Empire has one. And then we can also make the argument that the Rebels may or may not have stolen one. And the CIS, we can have it displayed so that they're like taking it over, like you do in Classic Battlefront 2. With that all being said, I hope for the next segment, I will hopefully have an elongated or a split version of this, depending on if we make it extra long or just do 2 different sections. And I hope to start figuring out how many pieces I have to do the front for the ray shield thing, and then start trying to figure out the back as well. Here is what it looks like if I were to do 4 different landing pad sections. And here is what it looks like if I were to do 2 landing pad sections with this 1 split in the middle. That way you know this is 1 section, this is 1 section. I think I'm leaning more towards the 2. I think that would look more impressive, a little bit more accurate to what I'm trying to achieve. Though I do think the idea of having 4 mini sections might also be applicable in a future MOC, perhaps. So what I'm going to try to do now, since we're going to lean more towards this, is start making my mills plates actually usable. Right now, everything's just kind of hanging out on top. I did have to put these down a little bit. See how it pulled up that 1 brick? That way things were somewhat aligned. Now I need to make sure I can start actually placing bricks down. I think I'm going to try to use as many of the random colors that I've got for plates, and then possibly a tile layer. That way we can have these be different panels we can pop off. It does mean what I said in an earlier segment is incorrect. Instead of just being a brick and a plate higher than just the base plate, it will be a brick, plate, and tile, potentially even more, depending on what I need to do to make these work as removable sections as easily as possible. Many of you have seen my Mars MOC on Instagram and other places, and that MOC suffers a lot from not being as modular as I'm hoping this one will be. I'm hoping to make this as modular as possible to make future changes as easy as possible. One such change I've already done is I've switched away from using pins in these Technic bricks to using an axle if I can get it to separate. I'm currently using this design I saw another one of my lug members use. It is the axle holder 1x2 and then a 1x4 Technic brick with, if my fingers want to pop that off, one of these with the 3 pinholes. This allows for a very smooth but strong connection using just a length 4 axle. I'm using my red ones because I tend to use my black ones for vehicles and such. So I'm trying to get rid of all the red ones. Yeah, it's so much easier to use and make sure that things stick together using the axle than the pins. Because sometimes the pin doesn't want to go into the hole. But the axle will always go into the hole, which is fantastic. Yeah, let me continue on with trying to make these different panels into different sections and making these mills plates more finished. This is what the new brick pattern looks like for underneath the plates. And this is what the mills plates looks like with all the plates placed on top. That was a lot of piece. So now it is 1 brick and 1 plate thick. Now I have to decide if we're going to put tiles underneath every spot or just jumpers. So that way the different landing pad sections can come off. Probably, if I want this to be as strong as I'm hoping it to be, I probably do need to use a combination of tiles and jumpers. And probably not even that many jumpers either if I want these to be super removable. Or maybe not jumpers at all, and then just make the different sections that the panels go into just high enough to where they just sink into the floor. That does mean trying to get the things out might be pretty difficult with the way I've done this, but I think that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make this look as cool as possible. So hopefully in the next segment, we'll hopefully have all the tiles in place to begin the real work. All right, it is the next day, and I've already laid out all of the tiles for each of the 4 sections. This is what the pattern sort of looks like. It's a bunch of 1x8s going up with it on the edges of the panels, and then a bunch of 2x4s in the middle to hopefully space them out and not have to use as many tiles. Looking at this now, I probably could have saved a lot of plates and bricks if I had figured this out beforehand, but I do want this to be as strong as possible, so it's okay if it overuses some parts. Plus, I plan on using this for quite a while for either conventions or just for all of my mock and work in progress updates on Instagram and or YouTube videos. So it's okay that it uses some parts. I'm going to be using it for a while, and I need it to be as strong as possible, so if I am clumsy, it doesn't just explode. The next thing I'm working on right now is taking the idea of this pattern that I found on some Google searches. I forget the name of the creator, but there's one in particular that I'm using to kind of give me the overall sense of how the pattern it looks like for these different landing pads. And now I got to add it to the other 3. I'm probably going to start with this one because it's the most complete. That one and this one. This one on the very end, I need to dig up some more parts so I can finish off this one edge. And then I'm leaving this one to the end so I can figure out the best way to just modify it without having to rip it all apart. But we'll see. I might have to destroy this entire thing. Yeah, that's where we're at. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is I've already gone through and filled in the spaces around the landing platforms with light gray. So that way they're all kind of locked in place. They won't slide around, except for this one because it's not the right size currently. Let's see. But that allows me to not have to worry about that in the future. And I've also already started laying out the area for the doorway. I'm leaving this trench here because I think it'd be really, really cool if in the future I can figure out some LEDs and have blue LEDs go through and light up this area to give that visual effect of the blue plasma whatever door being turned on. And then I've also started trying to figure out how to do the edges. I only have 2 of these in light gray, so that's why there's a blank spot right there. At some point, I hope to get 2 more to fill in that. And then I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do the wall. Right now I'm using these, but I currently only have 4. So we'll see how many I can either scrounge out from other builds, or what else I can do to figure out how to make the walls. But yeah, next segment, I hope to have at least these 2 done and maybe something else. And here is what the finished product for the landing pads looks like. Now that I'm looking at it from up here, it looks like it's a bunch of Roman 2s, which is kind of funny. But yeah, they all kind of look like this now. I've had to use these wedge plates and then certain places some curved ones, because I realized if I used these tile macaroni pieces that you could still see the green from the 16x16s underneath, and depending on camera angles it wouldn't matter, but if I want to take photos from any angle, I definitely needed to get rid of those. So instead I've made them slightly more blocky by using these wedge plates, and then some of these need to be replaced because you can still sometimes see the random colored 1x2s I used underneath to hold them in place. If I had a different solution, I would use it. So if anyone has an idea of how I can remove these without having to change out the 16x16s, I want to use those because they're the easiest things for me to use currently to make sure that everything's somewhat solid. So if you have another idea that incorporates those and gets rid of these, so this is all smooth and flush with the ground, let me know. Next, I think what I'm going to be tackling is probably this back area where it has all the doors and the windows and the catwalks and stuff, because I kind of have an idea of what this is supposed to look like, but I just don't have the parts for it. So I'm trying to get that part back there done, because I hope I have the parts for it. So I'll see you guys in the next segment. All right, so I filled in this area with a bunch of plates and bricks. I've also now opened up this one spot for a big door so it can open and close. I had originally filled in this area up to here and here on both sides, then realized if I want to be really fancy, I want the door to open. So open up some space for there. And then once I figure out the door, specifically just like the frame for it, I can then figure out how many of the other wall segments I've been seeing in a bunch of the Venator Hangar images I have pulled up, and then figure out how to make the second layer to then do the catwalk, and then hopefully it gets easier from there. Here's what the door is looking like so far. I'm gonna move back to where I normally have been sitting so that the camera stops shaking. So I've got mostly dark gray for the outline, and then I've slowly started trying to piece together a door using the zigzag pattern that I've seen most other Venator MOCs use. I think it's turning out okay. It's a little finicky right now just because the doors are barely built. I also had to figure out how to do the tiles properly, so when the door, as I break the door, okay. When the door is fully opened, you don't see random tiles down here. Originally, you could see like all the reds and whites that I was using, like I am over here. The other thing I have to figure out, and you could see in that first shot, is right here I'm using inverted 2x3s if the camera will focus. Yeah, there we go. I'm using these here, but on this one I'm using 2x2s. I think I'm going to do the 2x3s instead. At least based off of the one MOC I'm taking a lot of inspiration from. They use 2x3s, and I think they'll give more support for the upper level. I just need to extend this, because right now this part right here is 1 brick higher than this one, and that is no bueno, so I gotta fix that. And then I think we might actually be able to start working on the catwalk. Back here, I'm just filling in a bunch of these random spots with bricks, like these hinge bricks. You can actually put another brick on top. I am also running out of light gray bricks, so that's why I'm starting to use like arch pieces. These are the garage door pieces if I could get it off. These ones I think are stud shooter things, so just using what I've got so I can keep going. But yeah, hopefully in the next segment, I'll have the rest of the door frame done and maybe even the start of the next floor. This is what the door is looking like so far. These parts that are in blue and white will hopefully not be seen in the end product, but they are helping me guide the walls, or rather the door, right? So you can do that. I can push this side in, and then if I adjust it, that should be generally center. Part of this left door or right door, depending on which way you're looking at it, isn't done. That's just because I'm being a little lazy with that one. But we also started the second floor. So this should be mostly railing on this side rather. And then back here will be the walls. And then depending on how tall I end up making these walls, we will then start making the arching roof that just goes at a diagonal this way. And then they'll also tell me how big that's going to end up being. Another thing I realized I finally could find is I found 2 more of these. So that side is started and this side is started. I also realized I probably should move those there instead of down here. So at least for this specific spots of the frame, they will be too wide. And then the running board, I guess this running board, if I do it correctly, is actually going to be empty. So this specific spot's going to be too wide now. So 2x4 going all the way up, hopefully. And then hopefully I can get a lot of the strength to be back here and on the roof. So I think what I'm going to do now is just start expanding either, well, I might start working on just the second floor because I kind of have an idea of what the rest of this is going to look like. So I kind of want to start figuring out what the second floor is going to look like. Hopefully when I come back, we'll have a bit of the wall and then a part of the roof. Small segment just to show that in my hubris, I forgot to check if the 2 base plates could still split apart. Turns out, no. I had multiple connections that crossed the line. So now I'm having to go back through and fix those so that I can easily transport this to conventions or whatnot when they're split apart. And here is the progress so far. So I was able to get the back line of 4x installed and then filled in basically all of the random bricks that I think I need for all of these different sections. Let's get a closer look. So basically now I'm just waiting for all the parts. I did make a Lego brick and pieces order. Unfortunately, like these roof pieces and a few others are out of stock for bestsellers, so I'm having to wait for those to get in stock so then my order can be fulfilled. And then once that's fulfilled, I can hopefully be able to finish off basically the rest of the little details. I didn't quite think in advance of what parts I need for up here for making the wall and then the roof, but that can come later. I probably will need to spend some time in studio to figure out how to do the roof anyway, so that's not that big of a deal. So maybe we'll get 3 parts out of this mini series, but at least for this first part, that's basically all the progress. So let me set up some minifigures and some figures and we can close out. And finally, here is a little scene showcasing how well this MOC works. I underestimated how big the ARC 170 is from 2005. That is why it's not even in one of the correct spots. I don't know how I'm going to fix that. It might just be the case with the ARC 170 that's going to have to be like that, because I don't really want to make this build any bigger. But it does work pretty well with like the V-Wing and the Delta 7. Those builds are roughly big enough to fit in this space and not take up too much room in the back. The Delta 7 does kind of jut into this back walking area quite a bit, but the V-Wing doesn't. And just to give enough room for the illusion that like the ARC 170 could take off and get out of here, I did have to move both of them kind of far from each other. But if I didn't have the ARC 170, these could totally just fit in their spots. Otherwise, here are all these cool little minifigures I put on here. A lot of them are custom, meaning either custom printing or I just threw them together. Like this guy is not a Star Wars guy, but I think this guy looks pretty much like an astromech or some type of droid. Especially now that I've given it just one of those transparent minifigure heads. But I guess starting from the right and going to the left, we got Jedi Bob about to take off on a mission, and some Padawan girl that is waving him goodbye. Got some 501st troopers watching. We got a clone taking a break. We've got the janitor crew listening to some airborne trooper. Ooh, I'll turn around so you know it's an airborne. Ooh, I don't have a helmet for, so that's why. It's just got its head. We got the flight crew for the ARC 170 getting ready to take off. I do not have the astromech that goes to this guy, so that's why there's no green astromech chilling right in front of the guy running off. We'll see if that I ever get one. Going towards the back, we got a group of 501st marching off to some area. We got a 501st keeping watch. We got Anakin and R2. We got Yoda. We got another 501st keeping watch. We've got an officer and Kit Fisto talking. We've got a Treadwell droid and then some more troops heading off, marching off to the other direction. We've got a pilot just going off on their merry journey just to give the illusion that the hangar continues. I could have probably moved them closer, but it's fine. And then over here we got another clone taking a break. We got another clone just watching, seeing whatever's going on outside the hangar. We've got another astromech just kind of chilling and walking, rolling around. And then we've got the V-Wing pilot talking to some other clone while it gets ready for flight. I didn't really have time, or rather, I should say I didn't want to spend time trying to make like the actual equipment that they use. Like that's why the janitor crew is just kind of hanging here and they don't have like brooms or something going about. I do have one gonk droid. I forgot to mention him. There is one gonk droid, but I don't have him like hooked up to anything like recharging it. But I think it's decent. I think this gives the a pretty good impression of what kind of scenes I can do with this. I was originally going to put a snow speeder out here too, but yeah, obviously no room. And I decided I wanted to, with it being in Republic colors, at least for the first like display, I wanted to make sure that it gives the vibe of the Clone Wars first. I can then go in later with like the Empire, especially since these can be flipped out. I can, if I get enough pieces in the future, I can obviously switch out the red for like gray. That'll make the Empire views, Empire builds be more believable. But I think for the most part, I'm going to be lazy and just say like it's early Empire. So like they haven't stripped all of the red off of the Venators yet and on the inside. So plus I can always do like dark times, right? So the clones are still using basically all their clone equipment to be the Empire. And then maybe over time it'll slowly morph. And then I can do the Rebels, obviously, and then it can just keep its colors. And then I can do the CIS and just have droids look like they're taking over this area. So I could potentially just rearrange the scene a little bit and just have a bunch of droids everywhere. That's the beauty of me picking the Venator Hangar. I can do so much with it compared to like if I picked a ISD hangar or like a Providence hangar for the CIS, or if I picked like a Home 1 style hangar. I feel like the Venator gives me the most amount of flexibility I can do with things. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this part 1 for this mini-series. I don't know when part 2 is going to be. I'm waiting, like I mentioned in the last clip, I'm waiting for LEGO to restock some parts. Whenever that arrives, that will be when I start producing part 2. But thank you all for watching. I'm grateful for being able to make videos again. Now I've got a new space. And I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.